today on Ag News Daily.
Have that three-way discussion: the grower, the retailer, and the ethanol plant. I think that will be one of the simplest pre-planned decisions they'll make.
This new machine is unlocking more productivity, wider implements, faster speeds in a fixed frame tractor.
Welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show, live from Commodity Classic.
That's right. We are recording this week's show at the BASF booth, but there are tons of great announcements rolling out this week. What's the coolest thing you've seen, Tanner?
You know, it's been a lot of fun to see that E98 ethanol engine that John Deere put into their tractor. But we do have a lot of weather going on across the nation. We saw a lot of high winds in the plains last week, fueled multiple large wildfires, burned more than 400,000 acres, and underscoring an ongoing overwinter drought that, in fact, 74% of the lower 48 is now in a drought condition, matching that peak level last October. Snowpack across much of the Midwest is extremely low, and significant precipitation will be needed ahead of our spring planting season to rebuild some of that soil moisture. Drought remains this concern, especially from Missouri through northwestern Ohio. There have been several quick-moving systems that will bring lighter scattered showers and precipitation this week, and a better chance of widespread moisture coming this Sunday into Monday. And again, later next week across the Midwest, temperatures will remain mixed as the region sits between that colder air in the north and the warmer air we're experiencing here in San Antonio in the south. So while we're here at Commodity Classic, like we said, in San Antonio, we're seeing plenty of new product launches and companies that are sharing their latest information with farmers. So let's take a look at what they have been talking about.
Hi, I'm Michael Porter with John Deere. I'm the go-to-market manager for large tractors and tillage. And behind me is our new 8R 540, part of our new high horsepower 8R lineup, consisting of an 8R 440, 490, 540, both in a wheeled configuration like behind me, as well as a 4-track. This new machine is unlocking more productivity, wider implements, faster speeds in a fixed frame tractor with great maneuverability, tight turning radius, and visibility that our customers have come to expect from the 8Rs with the power of a 4-wheel drive tractor.
Well, Tanner, there were a gaggle of media reporters after Secretary Rollins spoke this afternoon, on Thursday afternoon. So let's hear what she had to share during her press conference this week at the show.
I'm very quick to note that I'm proud of what we've done, but we are far from declaring any kind of victory. There's a whole lot more to do. The second thing we talked about, of course, was the one farmer, one file. I hope you all heard the staggering numbers. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money have gone into an antiquated and broken system that included over 1,000 contractors across hundreds of different platforms. I have no idea how these farmers have been dealing with this all these years. I'm really proud. We, as I mentioned, pivoted members of our Doge team to work on this over the last year. So instead of having, the Richards and the Brooks and the Aubreys trying to come up with new IT platforms, we had super geniuses who did this for a career, walked away from that career to come in and help us rebuild the USDA IT system.
We've had a lot of conversations over the years. We've been talking about technology. You all used to stick one of these in my face. Now it's something more digital and fancier, and that's kind of where we're going. At USDA. We did deploy the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program on Monday, actually urging farmers to get a login.gov account.
Farm security is truly a national security issue. Fertilizer prices are forecasted to decrease 1.4%. Not enough, but at least we're going in the right direction. Seeds are forecasted to decrease 1.3%. Fuel expected to decrease almost 7%. And pesticides forecast to decrease 8.3%. That's according to all of our number crunchers at USDA. When we will continue to strike new trade deals, more around the world. Just this month, USDA led an agribusiness trade mission to Indonesia, specifically Jakarta, which is a huge new potential market, as is so much of Southeast Asia. In the coming months, we will advocate on behalf of you, our American farmers, in the Philippines, in Manila, in Turkey, in Istanbul, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Saudi Arabia, and in Vietnam. And y'all, that's just in the next few months. We are not sleeping in this administration. We have to open up these new markets if we're going to have a prosperous future for our agriculture community.
Well, Delaney, you've been sharing a lot of great content with our listeners and our viewers. Really appreciate that because I've been plenty busy myself. But what have we been seeing as far as tariff updates this week?
Well, certainly a new 10% U.S. tariff on imports from around the world took effect on Tuesday under the Section 122 authority following last week's U.S. Supreme Court decision striking down President Trump's broader tariff program. The court ruled 6-3 in Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump that the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act does not authorize tariffs. The administration responded by announcing temporary tariffs under Section 122, which allows duties for up to 150 days without congressional approval. While the president indicated over the weekend that the rate could rise to 15%, the legal cap, it currently remains at just 10%. According to Meeting Place, exemptions from the new tariff include beef, certain fertilizers such as urea, ammonium nitrate, UAN, and ammonium sulfate, DAP and MAP, and metals already covered under the Section 232 national security tariffs. However, products like ammonia, sulfuric acid, and sulfur are not exempt unless imported under the USMCA trade agreement. Ag groups across the nation, including the American Farm Bureau Federation and the American Soybean Association, are urging the White House to provide greater certainty to trade and policy and avoid new tariffs on agricultural inputs. So certainly a topic of discussion while we're here at Commodity Classic, Tanner. But Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley also says previously negotiated trade deals benefiting commodities like beef, pork, corn, soybeans, and ethanol are likely to remain in place though additional legal challenges are expected. We're also seeing questions remain high around whether previously collected tariffs will be refunded and whether the administration will pursue other trade authorities. For now, farmers are watching closely as the tariff landscape and potential impacts on both ag inputs and export markets continue to evolve.
Yeah, a lot of updates there. Glad that you were able to share those with us. It has been a lot of fun to, like I said, watch the release that John Deere had on the E98 tractor, but we also got some E15 news this week. So related to E15, the Renewable Fuels Association kicked off its 2026 National Ethanol Conference in Orlando. This week, they had a very clear message: get year-round E15 across the finish line. Certainly, that is something that's being discussed a lot here at Commodity Classic. We did also see that RFA President and CEO Jeff Cooper urged Congress to pass legislation allowing nationwide year-round sales of E15, saying that the stakes are too high for ethanol producers and farmers. A study from Iowa Biofuels and Corn Groups did show moving E10 to E15 nationwide could boost corn demand by nearly 2.1 billion bushels annually. Now, the House has set a deadline of February 25th to advance the E15 legislation that came out and went without a vote, as lawmakers will continue to negotiate the details tied to small refinery exemptions under the Renewable Fuel Standard Act. Ag leaders are saying the permanent E15 access would strengthen corn markets, would lower overall fuel costs, and support rural economies. And they're encouraging farmers to contact their members of Congress to urge them to push this measure forward. A lot of conversations down here around making sure we stay in touch with our congressmen as well as our state organizations to get lobbying in place.
You know, outside of Secretary Rollins, I haven't heard a lot of discussion around the Farm Bill while we've been down here, but certainly have seen some movement this week as the House Agriculture Committee postponed the Monday's planned markup of the Republicans' latest Farm Bill proposal because of winter weather, of all things, Tanner. The Farm Bill markup is now expected to happen this upcoming week, so I'm sure we'll report about it on the show next week. Farm groups across the country this week have been urging Congress to move quickly, warning that continued delays could create uncertainty heading into the 2026 growing season. Commodity organizations say long-term stability is needed for crop insurance, conservation, nutrition, and farm safety net programs, especially as producers face high input costs, volatile weather, and global competition. Lawmakers say negotiations are ongoing, but farm leaders stress that a timely passage is critical for lending decisions and overall confidence in the U.S. farm economy.
Well, we also saw environmental and farm groups that have filed a new lawsuit challenging the EPA's recent approval of updated over-the-top dicamba labels for use on dicamba-tolerant soybeans and cotton. This petition was filed with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, urges the agency violated federal pesticide and endangered species laws when granting the new registrations and is asking that the court vacate them. Groups involved include the National Family Farm Coalition, the Center for Food Safety, and the Center for Biological Diversity. This marks the fourth legal challenge to over-the-top dicamba registration since 2016. The EPA says the new labels for products from 3 ag crop protection companies, including BASF, where we sit, and stronger safeguards, such as temperature-based cutoffs, limits on application rates, and mandatory drift reduction on volatility reduction agents. Opponents argue this changes weakens prior restrictions and won't prevent off-target movement as previously led to in crop damage and other complaints. Industry representatives say dicamba remains an important weed control tool for farmers, while critics warn the renewed approval once again could create tension between neighboring producers.
Well, Tanner, this is an interesting piece of news received earlier this week. Marketing and communications firm Osborne Barr Paramore, otherwise known as OBP, has released a new report examining the purchasing mindset of U.S. corn and soybean growers. The report, titled OB Pulse, The Purchasing Mindset of Growers, is based on a survey of 300 farmers conducted during the recent harvest season and focuses on input purchasing trends, risk management, and factors influencing farm buying decisions. Company leaders say the findings highlight how growers are adapting their planning strategies into today's volatile farm economy.
Well, it's good to see young farmers interested in agriculture, but now there's a program to help support them. Applications are now open from FarmPath, a free 3-year national program designed to help make farming more accessible for aspiring and beginning producers all across the United States. The program from the Farm Foundation includes and provides training to provide resiliency when it comes to agricultural practices, farm management, business planning, mentorships, opportunities, and access to national agricultural professionals and a network of advisors. The participants may also be eligible for up to $10,000 in implementation funding to help put their new skills into practice. The Farm Foundation president and CEO, Sherry Rogie Fidler, says the program represents the investment in next generation of farmers by combining technical production training with education on markets, business decisions, and long-term farm success. FarmPath is open to applicants from a wide range of backgrounds. For more information on eligibility and details tied to the applications, those are available at farmpath.org.
Well, Tanner, 3 headlines this week from the USDA. Again, Secretary Rollins spoke here at Commodity Classic, but nonetheless still have no shortage of news pouring out from the USDA, including the opening of enrollment for the new $11 billion Farmer Bridge Assistance Program to help row crop producers facing temporary trade disruptions and high production costs. Enrollment opened February 23rd and runs through April 17th, with producers able to apply online and potentially receive payments as early as February 28th. Glad we're reporting on this. My husband just asked me about this the other day, but USDA officials say the one-time payment authorized under the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act are designed to help stabilize farm income ahead of spring planting, while the administration continues to work on longer-term farm policy and trade market expansion. In addition to the payment program, USDA is also asking farmers to help improve how agricultural data is collected and reported through a new request for information on statistical reporting methods. Officials say accurate acreage, yield, and inventory data are critical for market stability, crop insurance decisions, and marketing strategies, but declining survey participation and changing weather and planting patterns have made data collection all the more challenging. Even I think data, this could go into data such as acreage reports, WASD, all of the different crop reports we see coming out of the USDA. The call is there. And separately, USDA is moving forward with plans to dispose of the South Building in Washington, D.C., announced this week by Secretary Rollins as part of a broader reorganization effort aimed at reducing federal real estate costs and relocating agency operations closer to agricultural regions. So a lot coming out of the USDA this week.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they're following through with their plan, because we reported on that, bringing them closer to the rural areas was one of their important focuses. To wrap up today's show, though, we saw the latest Rural Mainstreet Index showing economic pressures were continuing for our farmers and listeners, as well as ranchers, with the February reading falling to 47.9. That's below growth neutral, that threshold of 50. That was down from 52 in January. This now marks the 12th time since January of 2025 that the index has signaled a contraction, reflecting those ongoing challenges in rural areas, especially across 10 states. Ernie Goss says that the decline reflects supply and demand pressures, grain prices remaining low, while livestock is performing better, but overall the conditions remain below neutral. Rural bankers are urging Congress for an additional financial support beyond the $12 billion package we've been talking about that's already allocated. And about 40% favor reducing tariffs, which has raised costs on even equipment, as well as other things. Despite these pressures, though, farm loan delinquency rates still remain modest, holding below that market threshold of 1.5%. So I guess that's good news.
Well, we're going to turn things over this week while we're here at Commodity Classic. And whether you attended the show or you want to hear the latest conversations from the farm industry, we'll be bringing you those conversations from this year's show in the coming weeks. But today, as we sit at the BASF booth, we're going to be talking with Scott Kay, the Vice President of U.S. Crop Protection for BASF, to hear about all the new things coming down the pipeline. So let's get into that interview now. Well, folks, we're so excited to be catching up here at the BASF booth with not just one, but two guests. We have a special guest appearance today with Bryan Perry, the U.S. Head of Season Traits, and Scott Kay, the Vice President of U.S. Ag Solutions. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excited to have you both as guests. I think it'll be a great conversation as we dig into all the things BASF is launching here at Commodity Classic and what's going on outside of the show as well. But Scott, let's start with you and some of the role that you play here at BASF. As we look at 2026, what has you most excited about some of the solutions coming out of U.S. crop protections?
Well, I'm most excited that there's still opportunities in corn and soybeans, but I think a couple lessons learned to me would be our most valuable. One, at last year's Commodity Classic, we launched Real Results Yield Challenge. We had 1,800 farmers participate in side-by-side treatments with Veltima or pick another BASF fungicide versus untreated or treated. And what we found out was that versus untreated, it was a 20 to 40 bushel yield difference. And so I think the lesson learned by those 1,800 farmers is going to be, we're going to treat with Veltima or Revitec, or pick your favorite BASF fungicide, and I think that'll be a big plus to farmers. And so same goes for those who maybe played catch up to Southern Rust or tar spot. I think the lesson learned will be let's have a planned application this year. The other area is Mother Nature hasn't given up. Resistance is a problem, and farmers who are thinking about where do I save some money, they won't find it by reducing weed control. I think that's what we found is that over time what's happening is farmers are spending more on herbicides because of resprays, because of maybe using technology that's not meant for the job or can't perform the job. And so there we're encouraging farmers to use product like Certain herbicide followed by Status. And so I think those kind of things are what we're looking for, is to help them put the best foot forward the first time so that they can get those weeds under control.
I'm really glad you mentioned some of the products last year and some of the results we've seen heading into this year. I think that's a great kind of before and after case study, if you will, to help folks understand where we were this time last year and where we're headed into 2026. But Bryan, to you, before Commodity Classic this week, you guys had a Science Behind event to talk about Nemasphere. Give us the 10,000 overview of what you shared with reporters.
Yeah, it was really exciting. You know, you think about BASF, and Scott hit on a lot of the innovations, definitely to help from crop protection, fungicides, herbicides. but maybe you don't think about seeds and traits. But it's been 8 years now that we've been, really investing and innovating in this space. And Nemasphere is really the fruits of a lot of labor and a lot of effort in that innovation space. It's the first ever biotech trait to control soybean cyst nematode.
Tell me what that means, biotech trait.
Yeah, so what it means is that it's basically a BT option. So if you think about like in corn, there's BT corn. It's been out there to help control problems like corn borer or rootworm. In soybeans, we've had native traits, which just means they're naturally bred in, and we've had that for a while to control soybean cyst nematode. But it's been 60 years since those were identified. Biotech trait would be just that, where you're specifically, isolating genes and finding the right one that helps target a new mode of action to control soybean cyst nematode. So we were unveiling the fact that this will be coming to market in 2028, which really is not that far away when you start thinking about farmers and when they'll start making purchasing decisions, when we'll want to get them out into the fields in Iowa and all across the U.S. to really showcase the benefit. Because this is the #1 yield robber in soybeans. It has been for 52 years, and now we've got a new solution to the problem.
And I'm always reminded, you said 8 years kind of in the making. I'm always reminded when I have these conversations just how long it takes to bring new technology like this to the market. 8 years, lots of trials and research. What were some of the things that you walked away with saying, this is it, this is what we need to move forward with?
Yeah, well, if I even really add, because I mentioned that's the 8 years since BASF has directly owned these seed businesses and been really investing and putting more into it. If you go back to the time that the trait was first discovered, it'll be 30 years from the time it was identified to where we actually bring it to market. So at our Science Behind event, Julia Daum is one of the lead scientists that identified this, and they walked us through all the lab work to go in and test and isolate and find which genes were actually providing the control, then taking it into the field and seeing, okay, it's working in a lab. Can it actually work in the field? So it was really exciting to hear that background. The other thing we unveiled is the fact that this trait, we're kind of tagging it the most comprehensive trait ever introduced into soybeans. Now, it's a big claim.
Big, bold claim,
Big, bold claim. Why is that? Well, nobody's launched a biotech trait to control cyst nematode, and it's been 60 years since a native trait's been introduced. We also unveiled that this trait will bring a fourth herbicide mode of action. So as Scott talked about weed control and ways we can help growers, this will bring in HPPD tolerance. So it'll allow the use of meso, trione, pre-emergence, which will be a fourth mode of action in soybeans to give growers more choice. And we believe that'll really help them. And again, the last 4-5 trait launches in soybeans have all been herbicides. So most comprehensive, nobody's brought a BT trait, and nobody's brought one stacked with a herbicide trait as well.
Yeah, and so help our listeners understand, when you say that, a big, bold claim, 60 years, kind of in the making to some extent, what does that do for the industry to move us forward? Put some perspective around that.
Yeah, I'll add something. I want to invite Scott in. I think, I'm a farm kid, and at the end of the day, it's as simple as helping farmers make more money. Soybean cyst nematode is taking at least $1.5 billion worth of value out of the market today. So just controlling that pest alone will allow farmers to transform operations. We had growers on our panel, one from Iowa, Holly Springs, Iowa, and one from Kankakee, Illinois, and they were talking about farms that they don't plant soybeans on because they know the problems there and they don't have a solution today. And so for them, this trait could mean 20, 30 bushel difference. It also means differences in rotation. And we think unlocking the whole acre, which I know Scott can hit on, when you think about, I'm investing a lot in fertility. Maybe I'm trying fungicides. My weed control, I haven't been happy with it because my beans aren't canopying. Well, that's all a byproduct of a pest that's basically lopping half the root system off. So we believe it'll allow growers to maximize their inputs more.
Yeah, sure enough. I think I think to me, it's just amazing how fast BASF as a soybean breeding company is taking a hold, right? So I think, and to solve for the #1 problem with our seeds and traits, I think just really phenomenal. But more importantly, I think it's this mentality to say, boy, if I correct what's happening below ground, think of the opportunities above ground. And we really took me to hear it from farmers. We had one of our vision plots for them to say that. They go, we had no idea. We like to try new things. They've tried new fungicides, new herbicides, only to be somewhat disappointed at the end of the day because it looked really good early and then everything would fail later on. And so once they realized, well, that SCN nematode was really causing us problems, it's no wonder. And so to have that farmer say, I'm producing 50 bushel, 60 bushel beans, but he says, now I know how I'm going to get to 90 bushel beans, which that's awesome, right? So I think so to me, I think you just unlock that full potential if we can help farmers solve for their SCN challenges that they're having. It's also, I think Bryan would say, is that farmers with sun death syndrome, that soybean cyst nematode is the leading cause for that to take place. So so I think there's lots of ways in which we're going to help farmers with this technology.
Well, let's switch tracks a little bit and stay underground, because carbon sequestration, 45Z, that is a topic still of discussion, with especially the added clarity that we received here recently from the administration. I know this is a big area of focus for BASF too as well, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. I think planning is a huge part of this year's theme when it comes to BASF. Planning for your fungicide application, planning to explore maybe new ways to control for herbicides. But I think this last one, we have another big opportunity coming from an opportunity for growers to qualify for, and that's for their CSI score. And what I like about so far, we haven't heard the total amount yet, but what we're asking growers to do is let's plan with your local retailer to use Xarvio to capture your practices that you're already doing. We probably won't stand in front of growers and say, let's start adopting new things. I think what we really want to do is make sure that they can get credit for their no-till corn with an ethanol plant. They can get credit for using a nitrogen stabilizer. And if they're using cover crops, they get credit for that too. So we really have a very simple ask, and that's let's talk to your BASF rep or go to your local retailer, because if they adopt Xarvio, there's just 5 easy steps for their retailer and them to be qualified. And then let's play the season out. Rather than what I'm fearful of is if we don't put the plan together, there's a chance it never comes together. So as it gets defined as we go, I think there'll be a lot of comfort from growers and retailers knowing who wants in. I also think that there's a real opportunity maybe in the next few weeks, next couple months, for retailers and ethanol plants maybe to come together and explain how is it going to work to their growers. And there again, I think BASF has an easy, probably the simplest approach in the marketplace with Xarvio Field Manager to qualify growers and to have that 3-way discussion, the grower, the retailer, and the ethanol plant. I think that will be one of the simplest pre-planned decisions they'll make.
Yeah, so for folks that are not familiar with the Xarvio Field Management Planner, give us a little bit more of what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is that Xarvio is a field manager. Field manager is an app that they can go to online with their retailer, and it's as simple as these are the fields that I use no-till corn on, and they click those, and then there's other information, but it's kind of driven by the application at that point. So that's why it's really 5 steps to getting the grower qualified with the retailer, and then you just kind of map out the practices. And it does the behind-the-scenes work for the grower and the retailer.
What about as they're creating that plan? What should they be thinking of when it comes to picking their seed and trait or their fungicide pass, their herbicide pass? What are some of those things that you're having those conversations with growers as they're making those plans before we get into planting?
I would add one more thing, because I think the in-field manager, one of the side benefits to along with your CSI score is that for those who've been wondering, am I getting my fungicide timing correct or not? Some growers, I think, could be under the situation where they have to have multiple timings. Mm-hmm. And so as simple as entering your planting date would now also have Xarvio start thinking about informing you and giving you alerts about your fungicide application. What's the most optimal time to make that application?
So it's not just a plan for your CSI sports, for your complete plan for your production season.
Yeah, and you even have features in there that with our Zetabo soybean seed, we've invested a lot of time understanding which varieties perform the best on certain field types. And so you can go in to Zarvio and choose Seed Select. It's another addition in combination with the bioenergy, and pull up your fields and get precise recommendations based off of the soils in your fields on what varieties perform the best. And simply making the wrong variety decision on a field can cost a grower 10 to 20 bushels. It's a good variety, it just doesn't perform well. No different than they make these decisions on corn. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of utility to just help growers plan and have the best, agronomic setup for success.
That's super interesting you mentioned that, because I think about our own farm and my father-in-law, wanting to test different traits or varieties every year. And we'll do that for a couple of years before we determine, is this going to work in our field and our soil conditions? But what you're suggesting is that could really speed up that process for growers, where it's not going to take them 2 or 3 years to decide if this works. It's year one, you're going to start to see that ROI.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, because behind the scenes, when we're going through our breeding process, we're doing the testing, the additional steps, looking at different soil conditions and how the products perform, to form an algorithm that basically, gets precise on what variety and on what acre. Now, the art is getting people to confidently trust that.
That's what I was
right,
thinking,
use it. But I had a farmer actually at the Science Behind event, the one that I mentioned from Iowa, reference that he had a field where the BASF, Zetavo representative, was recommending a certain variety because of what Seed Select said. And he said, no, I don't know. I want to plant this one. And it ended up not yielding as well. And then the one that he did try that was recommended, it yielded 10 bushels better. He's like, okay, I just need to trust it now. Yeah. So there is an element of that, but he's like, okay, you were right.
Wow.
So
that is just phenomenal technology. It's hard to even comprehend or wrap your mind around just some of that stuff that's coming down the pipeline for growers. What else has you both excited as we look at 2027, 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think it's just the opportunity to try new things, and so I think that's where BASF is. We have a full pipeline. A lot of farmers might not realize that every day they wake up, BASF's investing another $3 million into research and development, and that is why we can make the claim that we have $2.5 billion in future product development that is already in play between now and in the next 5 or 6 years. And so, to me, that's so farmers who are saying, I haven't heard you say something about what I'm worried about in the future, there's a pretty good chance that BASF has some of the solutions in their pipeline. I would say for sure in seeds and traits, we have a pretty dynamic lineup that's coming around 2030, 2032 that will address new traits for the soybeans, but also new herbicide. AI. And so I think those kinds of things are what we're really planning for farmers. And I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised at some of those solutions.
So maybe some things to watch for Commodity Classic next year.
Next year. Oh my gosh. So I think there's we'll have a host of products. To me, if farmers are looking at, say, See and Spray or One Smart Sprayer from BASF, I think those kind of technologies, what the results are going to show is that you need to continue to incorporate more residuals. So while I think they're a huge plus in terms of that spot spraying, I think the incorporation of more residuals is what's going to be the key to success in the future in terms of managing both resistance, managing your weed control, and trying to max yield. And so I think those three together is what the data is going to show. And so I would just encourage farmers to do that as they adopt new spray technology. Just keep in mind that more residuals is going to be what the right recipe is.
Bryan, coming to you too. What has you most excited about the pipeline here at BASF?
Well, Scott hit on the 3 million a day, but to quantify it in a different way, it's 11%, so 11 cents on every dollar. And we're really showing how we're turning that out. So we talked a little bit about seeds and traits. In seed, you always have new varieties that are coming through, breeding efforts. So I mentioned our Zetavo soybean brand. We also focus in canola with Invigor, which is a market-leading hybrid. And then here we are in Texas, so I got to call out our FiberMax and Stoneville cottonseed brands. But we've launched new traits, new germplasm into all these markets, and we're bringing connected crop protection solutions. So I mentioned my family farms, Scott family's farms. We know it's not easy right now. The ag economy is tough, but you need to invest in the right areas. You can't make a bad decision on cutting and then the weeds take over the farm. And so what excites me about BASF is we have a comprehensive seed and traits, seed treatment, crop protection. We have a lot of resources. We talk digital-wise that we can help growers make the best decisions possible and really get the most ROI and help them with the challenges they're facing.
Fantastic. Well, didn't know where the conversation was going to lead today, but I think it was a great one nonetheless. Scott and Bryan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Yep, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Well, hey, Delaney, that was a great conversation. Glad that you got to have that. Like I said, I've been bouncing all around this trade show, so I haven't really paid attention to the markets. What's happening there?
Well, good question. And unfortunately, we are recording this session during the early riser session with Matt Bennett and Joe Vaklovic. So we're missing that coverage, but South American crops excess moisture in Brazil is still raising concerns about soybean quality, including lower oil and protein content. And that could begin affecting the soybean and corn markets here if those wet conditions continue. Grains have some supportive news this week, but nothing strong enough really to trigger some major buying in futures markets. And although trade tensions have eased a little bit with limited pushback from trade partners following that recent tariff development that happened earlier this week, markets still really are trading pretty sideways this week. Cattle futures started the week higher after the cattle on feed report last week, but later dropped on some profit-taking and overbought signals. And we're also seeing expanded beef trade talks with Brazil and South Korea, along with negative margins for feeders and packers, which also weighed on prices this week as well. And lastly, as we look at the lean hog markets, hog futures held gains as money managers have already reduced long positions in that market. So not quite gearing up for our summer rally yet. But hopefully that'll be right around the corner.
It is. And I know you asked me earlier what my favorite thing I've seen since being here, but what about you, Delaney? What's your favorite commodity classic?
I always love seeing all of the big equipment right across from us. We can see the Fendt combines. I always think those are sharp. So I just love walking around, and it's also about the people for me, seeing all the people this year at Commodity Classic that you may only get to see this one time of year at the show. It's always a great time.
The weather's been great here, so we hope the weather's good where you're at. If you're going to get some of the snow this weekend, make sure you and your family and your animals stay safe. But for this week, Delaney, what do you say? Should we let them go?
Let's let them go.